Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Hockey Thursday Talks, hosted by Inline Hockey Island. We have Michael Green, and I'm Ken Musa, and today we'll be hosting Tara Fox. This session is quite special since we have to record that one due to the time difference, because we have today Tara from New Zealand. So, as they say in New Zealand, from the native language, kia ora, Tara. We are glad to have you here. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, things are good here.
So we always start with our guests by asking them where they're from in their hockey career, how did they start in ice, inline, basically how'd you get hooked on hockey?
Right. Well, I actually started out as a figure skater when I was a little kid on ice. We used to have in my hometown, which was Hamilton, an ice rink. And yeah, I started off figure skating for a couple of years. And my brother and my dad played ice hockey, and I think I just probably watched them a lot and was pretty jealous of that. And after a couple of years, they let me play, and I was pretty much hooked since then. Yeah, I was five when I started. I started ice hockey when I was about 8. And then unfortunately the ice rink closed down in Hamilton when I was about 12. And the closest thing to it was inline. So that's when I started inline.
So you said that you started with figure skating. So
Yeah.
would you say that starting figure skating helped you a lot in terms of your skating and getting started in hockey?
Yeah, I definitely suggest so. I think we could probably learn a lot from figure skaters and even like speed skating and things like that. Definitely for skating. Yeah.
And so in New Zealand, where do you play right now?
Well, I actually still play for the Hamilton club that I started with when I was 12. So it's a bit over 20 years later, and I'm still loyal to that club. I started with them about a year after they sort of established their club, and yeah, I've pretty much been there ever since. I live in Auckland, which is about an hour north of there, but I stayed playing with them anyway. Yeah.
You said that on ice closed when you were 12, but did you keep playing ice hockey in that time elsewhere or even in adulthood?
Yeah, so I travelled a bit. Like my parents would take me to Auckland to play a little bit of ice hockey. I played a bit on and off through those younger years, and then I had a little bit of a break. And then I went back to ice hockey a little bit later as I was sort of in my early 20s and played for the national team the first year that I went back to ice hockey, which is pretty cool. Yeah, and I had a pretty good year, my starting year back with the New Zealand Ice Ferns actually. So that was a bit of a bonus, but yeah.
So in terms of inline hockey in New Zealand, are there any leagues? How is it going? How is it organized?
Yeah, so we've actually, our sport has over the years, like past couple of years, sort of gotten a little bit smaller, like a little bit less numbers. That's something that we're working on at the moment. I'm actually part of the New Zealand Inline Hockey Board, and that's one big thing is that we want to work on our sort of grassroots development, but also the development of our coaches and all that sort of thing so that we can sort of try to build the sport a little bit more again. So we run a league throughout the year where within clubs playing each other within their regions. And then we have a big tournament for clubs towards the end of the year. And then not long after that, we trial for our region teams. And then not long after that, we trial for our New Zealand teams.
On that note, like how many clubs are there in New Zealand? Like roughly how many players are there active currently?
Yeah, so we've got roughly around 1,000 players registered. The clubs have definitely gotten smaller. One of probably the biggest obstacles is the facilities, and probably everywhere has that same obstacle. We had a lot of facilities closed down, like even in Auckland, which is would have been one of the biggest places. I think we had about 4 rinks up here. We're down to 2. There's one in Hamilton, one in New Plymouth. So. And a couple in smaller ones around the place that are not proper facilities, sort of more like halls and things like that. And then in the South Island, we've got 1 or 2 sort of inline rinks that are same thing, quite small, not really purpose-built facilities. So the clubs that we have is pretty good, probably, compared to the facilities we have. We have a few different clubs working out of some of the same facilities.
So I suppose that your situation is quite similar to the one that we have here in Ireland, where we only have 2 inline rinks, some closing up, and small holes, and trying to train like this. So how do the clubs here in New Zealand overcome this? Because we've seen the results, from all the age groups, and it keeps on growing. So I suppose that we can learn a lot from you guys. So what did you do? Did you increase the training times for the players? Did you do more clinics for the formation of the coaches or the referees? What's your secret ingredient in all this?
I guess it's a hard one. It's probably just playing a lot of hockey. So we for a small country, we have surprisingly a lot of talent that comes out of it, and that sort of shows in our different teams. Particularly our senior women's national team has done reasonably well over the years, sort of on and off. But I guess I don't know if there's any real key to success as such, but I'm definitely playing more hockey, being dedicated to training outside of hockey a little bit as well. I guess we run a few clinics here with Hockeywise, which we get quite a lot of kids coming to the camps, sometimes up to sort of like 40 kids for a weekend of a camp, and that we have, which I guess is helping that younger generation train a little bit more and just focus on their skills. And I guess other clubs just are working pretty hard as well to lift their levels of their players.
You mentioned there about sort of New Zealand punching above their weight in terms of world championships, which I think includes, for the women at least, includes a bronze medal in 2013. Is that right? Yeah,
that's correct. Yeah. So we did pretty amazing that year.
Yeah, you seem to be regularly competing with the so-called bigger nations. How has the experience been for you for representing your country at numerous world championships?
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing. Like it's a real honor to be able to do something like that with your country. And I've been involved with the New Zealand women's team for about, I think it was my 20-year anniversary last year. It hadn't been consecutive, so I hadn't been every single year. But the odd years I wasn't able to attend. But every year that I have gone, we've done like some pretty amazing things. Even just a couple of years ago, we took USA to a shootout, and that was probably one of the highlights as well of our playing careers. It just kind of shows us what we're capable of. We just got to probably, find that little bit extra to make it consistent and get us to keep that team year in and year out, and keep the development coming through so that we don't lose that level of hockey, I guess.
And so in terms of world championships, what would be the short-term and long-term objectives? Because you did have a bronze medal, so what's next step? You want getting the title?
Yeah, well, I mean, we were sort of aiming the last couple of years to be in the top 8. That was kind of our goal, really. And we placed. We've come pretty close. Like we placed sort of 5th and 6th and places like that. Last year wasn't so great for us. Unfortunately, we had a really good team that we went over there with. It was just there was the way that they set the tournament out and the schedule for us. Our pool play was really, really difficult, and it sort of put us on the back foot a little bit from the start. But yeah, I think our main objective would really be to be placing top 8, and sort of be able to sustain that comfortably, and then work our way up from there.
During our last hockey talk, we started to talk about about girls, women's inline hockey, and so we wanted to ask, because we're starting also in Ireland to have like a good pool of young girls taking on the sport. So how is the development in that area going in New Zealand? What would you say to young girls wanting to take part of this amazing sport?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely do it. It's fantastic. The more girls we can get involved, the better. We've got actually quite a strong number of junior women's players coming through right from a very young age, goalies and players. So our future is looking really good for women's hockey here. But I think we need to sort of encourage girls to want to play women's hockey, and then the more that are playing it, the more competitive it's going to be, and the higher the level is going to be, through it. And so a lot of the girls want to play in the guys' leagues, and because it is more competitive, it's more challenging and more fun for them, which we struggle with here. We don't field a lot of women's teams at our tournaments. But yeah, the more that we could focus on getting the girls to be wanting to play in the women's league, I think it would make a big difference to actually growing that league.
Yeah, do you find that this is I think in Ireland we find that we do well to recruit girls, but then we kind of struggle over the years to retain them as they enter sort of mid to late teens, or maybe the sport becomes a bit more competitive. Is there similar in New Zealand, or is that issue being overcome in some way?
We actually struggle with boys and girls around that age. I guess everybody's sort of starting to go off to college and things like that here. So that is definitely something that we are very conscious of, and we need to find a way to retain those players as well. So we're sort of the same, especially girls start to, go off and start families and stuff like that, and that becomes hard. We lose a lot of our really top level girls to that sort of thing. And we're lucky enough to get some of them back and they carry on. But even with the guys, it's around that age that we struggle to sort of to hold them and sort of keep them in that age bracket.
So also, this is also in some way, participation in the life, in the hockey life of the clubs and so on. Now we all know that inline hockey is not really a professional sport. So, and most of the clubs rely, on volunteers. People are there for scorekeeping, team managers, well, mostly parents, bringing kids, bringing players, and so on and so on. So how is the volunteer life in hockey in New Zealand?
Yeah, it's good. Sometimes we get parents that are probably a little bit too involved, which is always a tough one. But no, we have a pretty good group of people as in New Zealand that are, referees and scorekeepers and things like that we really need. And then obviously parents are here. They seem to be relatively committed to taking their kids to hockey. I guess that's the hard part as well, is once we get a bit older, our parents aren't there anymore, and there's lots of things to pick up on that we have to start doing, and that may be something that turns people away a little bit as well from the sport. But I think our volunteers are pretty good. We've got some good people in New Zealand.
You mentioned about you run Hockeywise, which from my understanding is like a sort of development camp aimed mostly at kids, and you brought that to Ireland 2 years ago. Can you talk about how that relationship came about and your experience and your time spent here?
Yeah, so that was a great time actually. I really enjoyed my trip there. So it was sort of tied on to a trip that I was already sort of over that direction. And Dorinda Sinton is a good friend from a long time ago when she lived in New Zealand. I've known her when I was really little. And she sort of had mentioned, hey, we could get you over here and get some help over here and show us what you're doing. And I was really excited about it, and it turned out great. Like we had quite a few kids there for the development camp, and so that's what Hockeywise basically is the main objective to it is really developing skills for players of all ages, but mostly aimed at that sort of younger generation. We focus on the key skills that we believe that's going to make you or help you to make yourself a better player. We did that over there with you guys, and I really enjoyed it. And I think the kids got a lot out of it that did it. And we had a chance to work with the women's team a bit, so that was really good as well. I really enjoyed it.
So also in terms of development of the sport for the kids. So for example, in Ireland, we have age groups, under 13, under 15, under 18. Some clubs do have some age groups, that go from under 6 to under 18. So what is the lowest age that you have, in different clubs in New Zealand? When usually the kids start hockey there?
Yeah, so we've got 10 and unders, but we almost had enough last year within our club in Hamilton for an 8 and under team, which is pretty cool. And like sometimes with the Hockeywise camps that I have, we sometimes have kids as young as sort of like 4 and 5 coming along to those, which is awesome. Having a kid start at that age is probably nothing better than starting at that age. So yeah, we start with the 8s, 10s, 12s, 14s, 16s. We have an 18s group, which is not overly strong here. It's that group that we're really trying to work on to get more numbers. And then we've got like the senior grades, and then premier, and then women's grades with junior women and senior women. And then we're also sort of developing or bringing in another grade for our women's teams as well. So we're going to have a younger woman, like a really youth woman, then a junior woman and a senior woman, to try to develop the women's hockey a little bit more.
So during those times, with the lockdown, it was quite a tough time. And we've all watched, I guess, the World Skate video, Pass the Puck, and Michael actually participated in this one. Now, we noticed, a couple of, players from New Zealand, Jana Kivel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Angele Mulari. I imagine you know them from your own team.
Yeah, I do. I've known them for a long time, actually, both of them.
So would you like to take this opportunity and send them a little hello or send them a little message? Yeah,
well, hey, look, both of them are very involved with Hockeywise, heavily involved with Hockeywise. They're both my coaches, and they've been a world of support right from the very beginning of Hockeywise. And I'm very proud of both of them, and what they've achieved in the sport is pretty amazing. I actually have coached Jana since she was about 12 years old or something around there, which has been pretty amazing to see her hockey develop. And she's doing some pretty amazing things now. And she's got a whole future ahead of her, which is pretty exciting. Yeah, and Anja's actually just come back from having a baby, so that's pretty cool, getting her back. So, yeah.
We noticed in that video that you have some pretty handy stick handling skills. Like I asked Dave if I could just send him a video of me passing the puck and walking off. He wasn't too pleased, but you showed up a lot of people around the world of some of the skills you showed. Like, what do you do to be so good at those skills, and do you think creativity is important in inline hockey?
Yeah, I guess I've never really thought of myself as being that amazing, which is probably why I'm always trying to practice and always trying to get better. Like I've always thought I'm probably a little bit of a perfectionist, which is pretty frustrating sometimes. But I will just continue to try something over and over and over again until I get it. So I've never really thought that I was that amazing, and that's probably helped me continue to develop my skills and sort of get to where I am now, I guess. But yeah, I don't practice all the time now. I definitely probably used to a bit more when I was a bit younger. But yeah, I've got my own little hockey den in my garage where I set up for some stick handling and shooting and stuff. So yeah.
Plus, we've seen your training because in some of your videos on Facebook where you're pretty much because you live in some sort of a farm, right? And you were being in front of the horse and skating just for the speed and stick handling on the pavement. So so farm working out. And by the way, because we've taken a look a little bit at your profile before you came here on the talk, and we've watched that you were doing 25 push-ups a day. Can you tell us about that and why you were doing it?
Yeah, so the 25 push-ups a day was something I was challenged to, which was to raise awareness for suicide and PTSD. So I thought it was a really good cause, and I saw a lot of people doing them, and I know that a lot of the time you'd just kind of scroll past their videos because you'd like it and carry on and not really watch the whole thing. So I thought, what can I do to make this just a little bit more interesting? And I'm lucky enough to live on a beautiful property with my wife here. So they've got horses and things, which keeps us very busy. But it's an amazing property, and I was able to be in a whole lot of different places to make it interesting for each video. So I tried to do something different every day. So I think it worked out pretty well. People seem to be reasonably entertained.
Yeah, a great cause to raise awareness for. You mentioned earlier in the chat about you played internationally in ice hockey too. And I had a quick look on elite prospects, and I see that you went to 5 world championships in ice hockey. How do they compare to the inline hockey world championships?
Yeah, I guess there's a bit of, I guess, competition still between ice and inline, and what the differences are or what's better. I guess ice hockey was a little bit more organised, and I do like that. There's a bit more discipline involved in the sport. There's a bit more what's expected of you is within the team, and the training leading up to the tournaments and things like that. So yeah, playing at World Champs in ice hockey seems to be made like a really, really big deal, which is pretty amazing. So it does feel sometimes like a bit more of a prestige type thing when you get selected for those teams and get to travel to those events. And those events are usually sort of made into quite a big deal and all live streamed and things like that. So yeah, playing for New Zealand for the Ice Ferns has been a pretty amazing thing that I've got to do in my life. And we've placed gold and moved up a division before, and which is pretty exciting for New Zealand to do that. And yeah, we've done pretty well otherwise. And even up till now, the girls, I haven't played for a few years. I sort of retired from ice hockey in 2014, just to sort of focus a little bit more on my coaching and Hockeywise, and I still continued with inline. But yeah, and then when you on the flip side, inline worlds it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I guess the team is probably a little bit more casual leading up to the events and what's expected of you, and even at the events, it's not as sort of strict. But yeah, I guess it's still a pretty amazing experience every time you get there. Especially events like Roller World Games, they're pretty incredible to attend something like that. Yeah, they've both had their positives and negatives.
And in terms of attending, those kind of events, because New Zealand is way in the Pacific, and so basically you're pretty much far away from everything. So in terms of traveling, I assume it's always pretty much expensive, except if you're going to Australia. So how do you get the funds in terms of do the players pay themselves, or do you get some sort of sponsorship or support from the local government, or how do you do?
We sell our organs. No. No, but you pretty much need to, right? I mean, it's like when we're going to Europe, which is most of the tournaments are in Europe or somewhere around that area. It's like 40 hours of travel or something every time. And yeah, the flights are wildly expensive, $3,000 odd and things. It's not uncommon for us to spend $5,000 or $6,000 to go to a tournament, and even within the country there's a lot of travel for games, so that's definitely something that holds us back a little bit from sending sometimes our best players, because they just can't afford to go. But we do work pretty hard, especially our women's team for inline hockey, the Inline Ferns, has worked pretty hard to build their brand. And my wife she's been the manager for the last couple of years, and she's done an amazing job with helping us get sponsorship things organised and raise thousands of dollars for our team to be able to give us just that little bit extra to help us get there. So it's been really good.
I'm sure playing for New Zealand in inline and ice over the last 20 odd years, you've been to some amazing places. Are there any sort of standout locations for you?
Yeah, I've been to some weird places too, which has been cool. Like I've been to the big places, America and Canada and things like that. Canada when I was really young, which was probably one of the best experiences I ever had, was the first time I played for New Zealand for inline hockey. I was 14 and I was playing for the New Zealand women's team, which they don't have that anymore. They have a junior women's team, so generally you're playing in your grade. So now, I guess it was pretty lucky for me when I was that age. So that's probably one of my most memorable experiences. But I've been to some crazy places like Romania and Iceland and things like that. So I guess, some pretty weird ones, but some pretty amazing and beautiful places all over the world. Going to Ireland was actually a massive highlight for me as well. I know it was in a World Champs, but after having a World Champs and then going there, my nana is Irish, and I got to go to her hometown and where she was born and things. So that was a pretty massive highlight for me.
And so, in terms also of international games, do you play regularly with Australia, or do you receive any teams on New Zealand? Do you invite other national teams to come there, or clubs to play against your teams, in New Zealand?
There is a little bit of that. Like we used to play against Australia a lot. I think Australia is quite heavily focused on their ice hockey. And they have a big league over there, like especially a women's league, which is it's a pretty good league. Actually, Anjali's played over in those leagues and over there, which is pretty cool. But we used to, yearly or every second year, play a big tournament against Australia, and we'd have every grade play in the tournament, which was pretty cool. It gave us that sort of kind of international experience. We haven't done that in the last few years, except we were going to do it this year, and unfortunately then COVID happened and the whole thing fell over. So that is probably something we will be doing again every couple of years and going forward, so that we have that sort of interim thing when we're not going to Worlds.
Yes, for this session, we don't have our little audience to ask, questions on the fly here. So we're gonna go straight to the little hockey challenge that we have for all our guests. I'm sure you've seen the questions. The first one would be, who is your favorite ice hockey player, and who is your favorite inline hockey player?
Right. Well, my favorite ice hockey player, and are we talking like NHL, or are we talking like?
It can be anyone.
Yeah, well, I'd have to go NHL, and I'd have to say Mitch Marner from the Leafs. Yeah, he'd be my favorite ice hockey player. And my favorite inline player, I'd probably be a little bit biased here. I'm probably going to say Jana Kibble. So I've had a big hand in her development, and I'm really proud of her. So that's probably my favorite inline player.
All right, so the next one, and you mentioned biased, but you can absolutely be biased, no worries. What is your favorite ice hockey national team and inline hockey team?
Right. My favorite ice hockey team would be the Leafs, following the old Mitch Marner. I'm pretty favourable of them. And inline hockey, I don't know. Maybe I'll just go for my home team, the Hamilton Devils women's team.
All right, last one. What is your favorite ice hockey rink and favorite inline rink?
Well, I guess we were lucky enough to play in the Honda Centre, which they also have as an ice hockey rink sometimes, and we did it as an inline hockey rink. So I guess that's probably my most memorable place that I've ever played. So I'd say that.
All right. Michael, do you have any other questions for Tara here?
No, I think we've covered everything. And like you said, we don't have the audience to help us out this week.
Well, I guess maybe you should come back to Ireland at least once, or we travel to New Zealand at least once, so we can do that live and get some questions from the audience.
Yeah, well, we'd love to have you here, and I'd love to come back. So anytime.
Well, you never know. We're starting to get quite a lot of girls, in all over the island. So maybe that would be perhaps one trip to go to New Zealand and play against the local teams there with our national women's, junior team.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So thank you again, Tara, for being a guest here in this second season of Hockey Thursday Talk. Now it will be broadcasted on Facebook and on YouTube. Please, everyone, like, share those videos here. They're meant to give a voice to all the hockey nations on the world and organizations that really support the sport of inline hockey. And so thank you everyone who's watching, and we'll see you next time. So as they say in New Zealand for the Kiwis there, kai pai, goodbye Tara.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers, Tara.